Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. He's speaking to us from South Florida. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Thank you for inviting me on, Jim. It's always a pleasure. Let me warn you, I've got a little digital problem. It's been 30 hours with tech support, so if we cut out for 7 seconds each 10 minutes of our conversation, it'll pass.
The Fed finally hiked interest rates 0.25%. Is that enough to do anything with inflation running anywhere from 7 to 15%?
Well, it's all about managing expectations, and I'm not quite sure how they've managed them. They've certainly given expectations, given us to expect for the last 30 or 40 years. So oddly enough, when the big announcement came, finally tightening after 20 years or whatever it is, the market actually rose. So as far as the end of inflation, I think that the bear market that's coming in stocks is what's going to kill that.
Now, taking a look at what the stock market hasn't reacted to, is that surprising? We have a war going on, the threat of another war happening between China and Taiwan, and uncertainty in the commodity markets with the nickel trade being halted suddenly in London. What is it? How have the markets reacted to all this different news?
Well, stupidly as always, but I don't think I've ever seen a period where there were so many tectonic, world-shaking events with outcomes that no one can predict. And everything, Ukraine, Biden's, our president's slippage into senescence, this huge consumer inflation we're having in the U.S., a stock market bear that's long overdue. There's just so many things in the offing that kind of feels like, May or June of 1914.
Now, with that feeling, what do you think is going to happen with nickel after a week-long closure of the London Metal Exchange?
Well, certainly going to make things that use nickel more expensive. It's anybody's guess how long it would take a market like that to quiet down. But I think it's a good example of the incredible fallout from our having disrupted the flow of resources and money that are tied to the Russian economy. And of course, as we discovered with a little problem with the Cypriot, the bank in Cyprus some years ago, that they were just doing a little finagling to screw a few Russian oligarchs who had absconded with billions of dollars. And that nearly toppled the global banking system. So there's so many little disruptions, or not little actually, potentially some very significant ones, and any one of them could destabilize the whole world.
So was that really the basis for the whole Cypriotic banking crisis? Some oligarchs decided to pull their money? Yeah,
no, they didn't decide to pull their money. It got decided before they did that, and I think this was among a consortium of Western bankers. They had to do something about them, and not do something about them in a way that will make the world better, but just do something in a way that would confiscate their money so that it could be in the hands of people who are able to manipulate things in that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, since then, both the U.S. and Canada have brought in legislation that allows bank bail-ins. In other words, they get to skim your bank accounts to bail out the banks. The governments don't plan to use government money to do that. Is that a concern?
Well, the word bail-in has really become, it's been popularized since the Cyprus episode, because that's how it was done. It's not like there was some FDIC functioning, not that the FDIC is going to do us any good when it's when the hour of crisis comes. But of course, the bail-in means that whatever is sinking a bank overnight, it's not going to result in all of the the depositors being made whole. So regardless of how the rules are written, whenever they're saying they with a capital T, we don't know really how money in the banking system will be allocated on that day of reckoning.
Crude prices again on the rise after a slight dip. Is there any relief in sight?
More than a slight dip, it's come down pretty hard, and I had put out something in my own letter, a technical forecast that said if it came down to 82, you definitely want to jump on it. My target is still 141, and I think that could produce the mother of all tops in crude, and it would probably be it would be simultaneous with a bigger bust. It's when crude comes down, it's going to be difficult for the world because so much of the financial assets that are in play are leveraged in the energy patch. So anyway, I am looking for 141 basis April crude. That's a NYMEX contract, and if it came down to 82, though, that would be a screaming buy.
Mm-hmm. Of course, it was about 2 years ago. Crude was in the negative. Hard to believe that.
Yeah, we should have just bought big tanks, put them in our backyard, and loaded up on $6.50 a barrel crude. But of course, nobody thought to do that. And I don't drive that much, so I went out last night. I took my son visiting. We went to dinner, and we had to stop for gas. And I hadn't bought gas since the trip to Costco, where it was $3.96 for, I guess it was mid-grade. So last night I paid $5.15, and it was the highest price I've ever paid. And you begin to appreciate how you talk about rippling through the economy, but it's going to ripple through it like a tsunami. My son flips Supras, and he was driving not a semi, but it was a pretty good-sized truck with a 30-foot trailer, and just a little haul from his shop in Utah to a place in Ohio where he was buying one of these Supras and some parts, and the trip back, he said the gas was $1,800, and he does some very specialized shipping, mostly high-end autos and motorcycles, and the quads, but he's just such a minuscule piece of a much larger market. So, of course, everything that comes to us by truck, which is pretty much everything, even when it's unloaded from the train, is going to cost more. So I don't think we've really begun to process that. Of course, the problem is no end. You can see no end in sight. There will be, but it's not going to be the end that we would hope for, namely a bust in the stock market.
Will these very high gasoline prices cause a recession?
I don't think so. I don't think we're going to get off nearly that easy. The system is so loaded with financial leverage and debt that we're not going to have a recession. The Fed has been noodling around now for decades, so we're really going to get the results of the unwinding of all that noodling. So a recession would be probably the best thing we could pray for, but that's not what we're going to get.
What are we going to get?
Well, I'm not even going to imagine it for you because I know our interviews are glum. They're dark enough. But I would only say that what's coming lies almost beyond the imagination. And there are a lot of reasons to think that the depression that we're about to go through will be a lot worse than the one in the 30s for a dozen different reasons. We had a sound dollar at the time. People weren't in hock up to their ears with mortgage debt. 30% of the American population was involved in the agricultural economy, living off the land. They were much more resourceful then. They could fix things. And so people held jobs that weren't so specialized that you didn't even know what the heck they did, which is the case these days. A lot of, it's like, what do you do? And half the people out there, especially in the Silicon Valley, would think they're perhaps adding something to the economy, but we're going to discover that so many of those jobs, especially the well-paying ones involved in the tech center, have just been kind of inflated will-o'-the-wisps.
Well, I found a lot of the jobs are just recreating what's already been created, like Windows 12 or 11. Is it any better than Windows 7? No, they just moved everything around.
Yeah, and when you have that conversation sort of set off against the conversation about plumbers, electricians, and other tradespeople, you understand where the real value in the economy is. And if you've tried to get a plumber and an electrician, you know how difficult that is. So I think tradesmen are really people who can actually do things, make things, build things, fix things, are going to continue to extract a higher and higher premium.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, with the showdown in nickel, are we going to see another similar incident, say, with copper or gold or even silver? They're metals as well.
Well, I'm just going to say what I've been saying for 40 years about gold. I don't care. I don't see it going to $5,000 an ounce, much less 50. But you can bet that it's going to hold its purchasing power relative to any other class of investable asset you might hold. So copper, I don't know. Copper's been kind of a funny thing. There was a time when you could have seen 50 years of collapsing copper prices simply because all the third world countries that were installing phone systems were doing it with satellites. We didn't have the need for copper, but I guess industrial uses have actually increased. And so I don't know. Copper is supposedly able to predict recessions and economic cycles, but I think we're sort of out of phase because the big cycle, which is financial products, has subsumed commodity metals for whatever their value.
So with just a 0.25 increase in U.S. interest rates, how many more hikes would they have to do to actually get a handle on inflation? And are higher rates actually the solution to higher prices? Because I've heard the saying, the cure for higher prices is higher prices.
Yeah, they're the solution in the sense that they'll bring about that deflationary bust that's coming. And there, I'll just stick with the forecast I've been putting out for quite some time, 3.01% on the 30-year. We've talked about the barbell strategy before. It's kind of the invention of my good friend Doug Bainfield, where you would simply hedge your nest egg with treasury paper against gold assets. And what I like about it is that there's almost no scenario, certainly none that I can imagine, that would cause both of those things to fall in difficult times or even good times for that matter. Gold has been holding its own, and treasuries have gotten pounded, but if we get in some sort of serious trouble, just try to think of one thing that would push them both down, and you can't. There are some scenarios, many of them, where one would go down, but the other would go up more. And there are even a few scenarios where both would go up, and that's the one that I expect. So I like the barbell very much now, and I would add that no one ever went broke buying stuff that nobody likes.
Rick, how would you sum up what's going on right now?
You can't.
Yeah.
When I was saying earlier that there's so many things going on, big things, for which the outcome is absolutely unpredictable. It just feels like the summer and spring of 2014, of 1914 must have felt before the world got tipped into conflagration. It's just scary. We are very definitely living in the accursed, interesting times of Chinese lore.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Indeed, a pleasure, Jim. I always appreciate the chance to connect with your audience.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. If you have any questions for Rick or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.